This is Support is Sexy, episode 307, with Ahyiana Angel, host of the Switch, Pivot, or Quit podcast. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And if the only thing holding you back from telling the world your story about your business, about who you are, and about what you're up to is that you still haven't figured out your brand story, then I want you to sign up for my free course on how to create your unforgettable brand story at brandstory.tips. Now, speaking about branding and creating your brand story, I am so excited to have our guest today, Ahyiana Angel. And Ahyiana is the host of the Switch, Pivot, or Quit podcast. And haven't we all been at that stage at one point or another, right? Should I switch? Should I pivot? Should I quit? Always trying to figure it out. Should I rebrand? So I'm excited to talk to Ahyiana about that and about her own experience going through that recently. Her company and organization and her podcast used to be called Life According to Her. And then she decided to switch and pivot and change it to this fantastic new name, which I think really encompasses her brand and so much of what we go through as women and as women entrepreneurs. So she's going to talk about her journey with switching, pivoting, and quitting. She talks about all of that in here. And she also shares with us some other great tips, including sometimes it's not the job, it's you. And I want you to listen out for that because that was powerful even for me. Also, get an internship no matter what age you are. How to focus on one goal and don't let go. Start working on your dream before you leave your job. We talk about that a lot around here too. Always start with research. Why you have to create space for people to help you. You know why? Because support is sexy. Also, sometimes you have to go for it before you're ready and learn along the way. As I always say, there's learning in action. Know when to let go and pay attention to the signs that it might be time for a change. And of course, she shares her tips on how to know when to switch, to pivot, or to quit. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode with Ahyiana. Tons of great information in here. So without further ado, Ahyiana Angel. So Ahyiana, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm extremely excited to join you.
Excellent. So first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Crazy enough, I still don't know if I've really fallen in love with entrepreneurship.
Fair enough.
You know, it's such a up and down type of world that you live in when you're an entrepreneur, when you're working freelance. And funny enough, when I was in college, I can specifically remember being in one of the clubs. You know how when you're in all these different clubs, all these people come to you and they talk to you about different things and different career paths and all these things. And I remember someone talking to us about entrepreneurship, and I don't exactly remember the context, but I definitely remember saying, you know what? I'm good. I don't want to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, that's just not my ministry. I'm totally fine. Like somebody has to be the employee, right? So that was sort of my mindset, especially leaving college. And I feel like I didn't start opening up to the idea of entrepreneurship or doing things on your own until I got into like my third job, until I was really at the NBA and I was like, you know what, I'm sick of this. I'm over this. Like I'm a little bit too bossy to be in this space that I'm in corporate America. I need some freedom here, you know? So yeah.
That's so interesting. What do you think it was when you were in college that made you say, like you said, no, it's okay, I'm good? Was it that had you been taught to be, not taught to be an employee, but you know, in a certain, I don't know how old you are, my generation, we were taught find a great job and do that, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. Entrepreneurship wasn't a thing that just everybody did.
No, and it wasn't something that was familiar to me. I didn't have a lot of entrepreneurs as examples around me and family or anything like that. And you're right. My parents talked a lot about security. The conversations before I went to college were all about, and picking my major and things like that. It was all about creating a lifestyle that would be secure for yourself. So picking a field that you could make decent money in, it was that type of mindset. So entrepreneurship was never even a part of the conversation. So I think that for me, when someone even mentioned it, it was so foreign that I was like, no, that's not for me. Plus, it seemed like it would be a lot of work, and I didn't even really know how much work it would be then, So I think it was more so that it was just a foreign concept to me. And I felt like, hey, all these great businesses out here, yes, I know they were started by someone, but someone has to work there as well. And I'm not trying to rock the boat. I just want a good job.
Now, where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Northern California. So the most familiar part when people say Northern California is San Francisco Bay Area, but not specifically San Francisco. I pretty much grew up all around San Francisco. I was born in Palo Alto and raised partially in East Palo Alto and San Jose, Santa Clara, all of that, Modesto. So I grew up Northern California. So I'm a Cali girl to the heart.
You're a Cali girl. That means most Cali girls I know are laid back.
Yeah, pretty much.
Unless you turn them up, then they're not.
Exactly. Unless we're out having a good time.
Exactly. Now, what was a young Ahyiana like growing up in California?
Oh, honey, sassy. So not too much has changed. Everyone in my family says now, they're like, you're pretty much the same as you were as a kid. Sassy, bossy, very direct, don't hold back. I can remember my mom telling me a story about me as a child, and my father had come to pick me up, and my parents weren't together, and he came to pick me up, and I was really, really young, maybe 3 years old. And so we were in the car, and he went to a liquor store, and he left me in the car while he ran into the liquor store. And when he got back in the car, my mom said that I told him, "Are you crazy? Don't ever leave me in the car alone." My mom never leaves me in the car alone. And I'm going to tell her too, I can't be left alone.
He went off.
Yeah, the nerve of me. And so when he got back to my mom, he told my mom what happened. He was pretty much in our words now, she checked me. And I was so taken aback, this little girl, what is she even talking about? But she was right. And he was like, I realized she was right, So I've just always been very, I guess, outspoken and sort of had a mind of my own.
Has there ever been a time that you can remember when being who you are, outspoken, bossy, all the things that before people used to try to say, don't be like that, be quiet, to young girls, I should say, don't be like that, that's not polite and that kind of thing. Do you find that it has served you in some great ways throughout your career and then as an entrepreneur now? Or hindered you, served or hindered?
You know what? I think it did a bit of both, because I think in corporate America, it hindered me because I wasn't the person that you could just do anything and say anything to, and it would be okay. And I would just go and cower in a corner. But yet people don't like when you speak up like that. So for example, I used to work at this PR agency, and I had this boss who was, and I just say boss because it was only her and I on this team. And you know how it is in PR agencies, it's like a publicist and an assistant, and I was her assistant. And I heard all of the rumors before coming into that position, but I knew I needed to work at a PR agency. And I heard that she was basically a raging bitch, but I was like, it's fine. I can deal with it. And the first thing that people would say to me is, wow, I don't hear you and her arguing and bickering as much as I heard her argue and bicker with her previous assistants. And I said, because I'm not going to do that with her. That's what I'm here for. I'm here in a professional capacity. So in some senses, my demeanor and the way I approach things has really helped me. But then on the flip side of that same exact situation, there was a time where I needed to get this package out. She told me that the package needed to go out by the end of the day. She made that very clear. And I knew what type of person she was. Yet when it was time, all day she had been in and out of her office with the door closed. Now it's slowly creeping upon time for DHL to come. It's 5 o'clock. It's like right there. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? She's on the phone. I tried to pop my head in there and everything earlier. She's just not, she's like blocking me. Mm-hmm. And I knew I was being set up for the failure. So then it could become my fault. So what I did was there was a master key at the front desk. So I went and got the master key. And this is me and my sassiness and just like, not really caring, just needing to get it done. I went and got the master key, politely tapped on her door a couple times, and then unlocked her door and came in, grabbed the package that I needed because I knew exactly where it was, and then exited. Mm-hmm. She was pissed. She was pissed. But there was nothing that she could really say to me because she tried to set me up, but me being bold and not being one to cower in the corner and back down, I just didn't allow her to. So it's like, I'm sure that she hated me after that. Well, I know for a fact she hated me.
Which is interesting because you did what you needed to do, go above and beyond to get the job done.
Exactly. So there are times when you are being true to yourself and other people won't like it. But there's times when you're being true to yourself and that's all that you can do and you feel good about it because you know that you don't have any malicious intent. You don't have any ill will towards anybody. You're just doing what needs to be done.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, who would you say were some of your greatest influences growing up?
I think it's the Leo in me. I can't say that I have ever had people that even though I know influence and idolize are two completely different things, but I've never had, I was never a fan of anybody. You know how growing up people would have posters on their wall and they'd be like raging fans for certain people. I was never a fan of anyone like that. So I would have to say that my influences are just collective. People that I gravitated to and found different bits and pieces of them that I liked or that I wanted to try and emulate in some manner or that I respected about them. But I can't say that growing up I had specific people that I said, oh, wow, other than Denise on the Cosbys because she went to college.
Right.
But, and those types of shows and programming and things influence me, but I can't say that I have very specific influences because I think I just pull a bit from everything that's around me to get what I need. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. Absolutely. Now, when you talked about you were in college and, hearing about entrepreneurship and deciding that, no, that's not going to be me at that time, at least I'm going to focus on a job. What kind of job did you think you were going to do? Was PR the thing at that time, public relations, or something else?
No, honestly, I didn't know what I was going to do. To be completely honest, when I first went to college, I went to Cal State University, Long Beach, and I went there initially because they had a good physical therapy program, and I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist until I got into my first physics class, and I was like, science is not my thing. Wait a minute, nobody told the girl that she had to do all this science, all these science classes, and so I switched to information technology because once again, listening to having conversations with my parents, stability, money, career, all of that played in. And I was thinking, okay, information technology could be a good fit. That didn't quite work out as well either. All the zeros and ones in the coding. And I was like, I'm lost. So then I transitioned to marketing and I knew that I was a creative, but I never really felt like I could fully delve into the creative side of myself. And so that was kind of like a happy medium being in marketing because it had the business aspect, but then it also had some element of creativity. So when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what jobs were available to me because marketing and getting that type of degree, there's such a broad spectrum. What happened was I ended up being in this internship program called the T. Howard Foundation. And they were based out on the East Coast out of DC. And I was the only intern from the West Coast, from California specifically. And I did an internship with them my junior year. And I had an internship at Showtime Networks and I was in the sales and marketing department. So I got to see how that felt and how that ran. Mm-hmm. Now, after walking away from that internship, I still couldn't say that I just was so drawn to the sales and marketing department and that's what I wanted to do. The jury was still out. I was still trying to find my way. So I ended up getting this enterprise internship. They used to come to our school like crazy. And so I ended up applying just to have a backup. And I got this internship at Enterprise. So I was working part-time hours there. Then the T. Howard Foundation called me and said, we have an internship in PR at the Game Show Networks, which was in LA. And it's a cable network. And I was like, Okay, I didn't really know much about PR at all, but I said, sure, sign me up. It was paid. All that's another thing. T. Howard Foundation, all of their internships were paid, so that was great as well. So I went for the interview. They liked me. I liked them. They gave me the internship, and I ended up staying in that internship through the summer for 9 months. I stayed there for 9 months because they really liked me. They knew I had graduated, and they basically were keeping me around until they could find a full-time position for me. Mm-hmm. So I never knew that PR would be my route. But once I got into it via this internship, I liked the writing element of it. I liked the entertainment element of it. I liked the coordinating things and working with different people and working with different departments and stuff. So there was something about it that did appeal to me. So I sort of just like took it and ran with it from there. But that's why I always tell people doing internships as early as you possibly can is the best thing. Even as an adult, to do an internship is not a bad thing because it helps you to understand the ins and outs of the business, and you can see what you might be missing from the outside looking in if you just think that one type of job consists of one thing, and it really doesn't. You know,
that's such great advice for, especially as you mentioned, for adults to think about internship, apprenticeship, whatever it looks like, anything that you're interested in. Sometimes we come up with, from the outside, our own idea of what it is or why we can't do it. Whereas in your case, you just talked about, yeah, okay, I'll take it. You were younger then, but still just having that attitude of, okay, I know I can figure it out, confidence in yourself. And then for... go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to add this one thing because I know that there's a lot of people that are bloggers out there, and that space is very, it's saturated right now, right? So it's hard to differentiate yourself, and it's hard to sort of make your mark. And I was telling one of my friends who's in the beauty space, and she didn't take this idea and run with it. So I'm more than happy to tell your listeners, and hopefully someone will take it and run with it. And my thought was, look, there's a lot of people in this beauty space, right? How do you make your mark? How do you set yourself apart? What if as an adult, full-fledged into your career, you go and you take an internship at one of these beauty companies and you document it and you learn everything that you can possibly learn and know about that space, especially if you're someone in that beauty blogging space who's looking to transition to have your own cosmetics line or anything of that nature. Just create your own products. Why not go and make content out of you being whatever age you are and doing an internship with one of these brands that maybe you've established a relationship with? I think that that would be such dope content, but no one has really done it like that. And you'll probably get so much media coverage and everything else. So hopefully somebody does it. But I just think that there's nothing wrong with going outside of the box, especially when it comes to internships later on in life. That
is a great idea. So for anybody listening, please take that idea. Your friend is not doing that, right?
No.
Okay. So that is a great, so you're so funny. I tell friends that too. So like, I'll give you 24 hours to let me know if you're going to do this. If it's something I think, otherwise I'm going to do it or share it. No, exactly. That's such a great idea because, well, one, it's blogging, but it shows a different way of doing it or a different topic, still within a popular space though of beauty. And then it helps as far as writing and getting the word out about whoever does this is creating. And then this unique experience of being a certain age and being in this industry and learning as you go. It just has a combination of everything that I think people would be attracted to. It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Somebody take it. Let us know. We'll give Ahyiana credit.
Let me know how it works out.
Exactly. And then the other part that you mentioned earlier that I thought was so good, which I did the same thing in school. I went in as a business major because that's what I thought people did when you went to college. And I hated it. And I changed my major to English because one of my professors at the time was like, well, in short, he basically was like, you say you love writing. Why not be an English major? And in English, I was thinking, oh, but I don't really want to teach. And then he explained all the other things you can do with communications and that kind of thing. So for all of our listeners who might be in school or going through this phase of thinking about, should I change my major? Yes, if it's something that you think you're interested in, even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, which is what you mentioned, Ahyiana.
Yeah, absolutely. Take a chance. You have to take a chance and follow what feels right to you and pay attention to your natural skill sets, because those are the things that won't ever leave you. They won't feel forced. They won't feel extremely hard, and you'll be okay. You'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out. And I think, too, so many of us, and we're all kind of raised this way. We try to make these big decisions in college of what we need to take for the future, when really, for the most part, you don't know unless you're going into a specific field like accounting, engineering, etc. But most of us, it's what are you interested in right now?
Yeah, and I think it's just so unfair to ask a 18, 19-year-old, what do you want to do for the rest of your life?
Right.
Declare your major. It's almost like saying declare your life.
Right.
Well, hell, I don't know. I haven't even lived life. I don't even know who I am as a person yet. And I think that's one of the things that they don't focus on in the education sector of things, or it's not widely focused on, but it should be more focused on developing who you are as a person and understanding who you are as a person. So then you can make those decisions to say, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, or these are the types of things that I find myself gravitating to. It's very hard to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life when you are so young, so naive about the world and everything else. And that's a part of the reason where you come to the whole switch, pivot, or quit point in your life, because you've been just checking the boxes. And then finally one day you look up and say, I'm not happy checking the boxes. Now what?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So then how did you get to the position where you were a publicist at the NBA from where you were before making that journey? And then we'll get to when you decided to make a big move.
Okay. So I ended up moving to New York, and I just applied for the position online. I saw this position was open, and I knew that I fit all of the criteria, and I applied, and they ended up calling me in, and it was a long interview process, like over a month, and I had to do a writing sample and all these other things, but it ended up working out in the end, and I got the position, and I was so ecstatic about it because I had gone to like some of the events like the AllStar Game and stuff like that before. And I was like, oh my gosh, how cool would this be to actually be working for the NBA and to have like the inside track? This is like going to be so dope. But I didn't know like what the reality was. And the reality was that going to AllStar and working AllStar was
very different.
Totally different. It was 24. It was like being on call like a doctor. It was like 24/7 work. And I remember my very first All-Star was actually in New Orleans. And during one of my 5 minutes of downtime between running from the office that we had set up in the hotel to my hotel room to try and quickly eat and change, I talked to my mom, and I ended up just breaking down crying because I was like so stressed out, and I just didn't know what I had got myself into. And it was just like all these demands, and I felt like it was so much pressure, and it was my first one, and I wanted to do well, but it was like these are like almost like impossible circumstances to do well. So it was just very, very trying. And I just remember breaking down crying, and my mom just like comforting me and being like, it's okay. All you can do is your best. You just give it your best, and you just don't worry about the rest because you can't control every little piece of this. And this is your first time at this. So just do your best. So it was one hell of an experience. The whole job was.
The whole job was. How long were you there?
6 years.
6 years. Okay. So as you go on, I know that those first times I've been through that with a lot of events or things that you're doing, and especially when you thought it was going to be something else and it ends up being like the hardest thing you've ever done. But then after a few years, though, did you feel like you sort of shifted into your groove with the job? And it's this, in some ways, obviously it was still a lot of hard work, but there's a lot of glamour into a job for the NBA too.
Yeah, it is. And eventually, yes, I did find my groove. We did, for the last Los Angeles NBA All-Star Game, we had this, and I'm saying we like I still work there, but I was there at the time. We had this T-Mobile sponsored magenta carpet, and it was the first time we had done anything like this. So it wasn't a red carpet, it was a magenta carpet. It was huge. It was more like MTV style type carpet. It was at the Staples Center. Like, it was the biggest production that we had done in terms of carpets and red carpets. And I was in charge of coordinating everything from before we got there to doing the walkthroughs and run-throughs with all the staff, coordinating all the media and everything and beyond. And it was amazing. I got nothing but praise from my peers within the company, at the different media outlets. And this is the thing. When you're talking about NBA, everybody thinks like, oh, the NBA, like everybody gravitates to and loves the NBA. But the hard part of the job was I was in charge of, and I was working on the entertainment side of things. So when we would have an all-star, let's say in some place like Phoenix, my job was to try and convince like the entertainment tonights of the world and extras and all of that to actually come to Phoenix and cover it. Well, that's not always easy. They want to know who's going to be there. Is it someone worth sending a crew to cover? But in LA, we are in their backyard. So we had all of the entertainment crews there. And like anybody was on that carpet, was getting footage and was trying to be interviewed as a celebrity, as well as I had tons of people who were no names trying to get on the carpet to make a name for themselves, you know? So it was like, I'm sure it would be 10 times more hectic now because everyone calls themselves a media outlet now. Right. But it was one of those times where I definitely, by then I had found my groove. I felt very proud and accomplished after that event. And it was something that went to the testament of my hard work and my follow through. So by then, yes, you're right. When you first get started, it's extremely hard. You don't know what you're getting yourself into, but there did absolutely come a point where I found my groove. Even with NBA finals and stuff, we had to travel for that as well. Sometimes I'd have to travel for conference finals, go back and forth to city and do things with shows like Jimmy Kimmel Live and stuff. And all this stuff I would do by myself. And I had totally found my groove by then. So it was good. I reached a point where it was good. Yes.
So you reached a point where it was good, but then you decided to quit. Mm-hmm. So tell us about how you got to that point and making that decision when, sometimes people think that you have to be miserable at a job, and you let us know how you felt at that moment. But I know people think you have to be miserable or so unhappy or whatever has to be quote unquote wrong with the job for you to move on. And that's not always the case.
Right. I can't tell you how many people would say to me, oh my gosh, you have a job at the NBA. You're crazy. Why would you ever leave? You know, but at the end of the day, it's corporate just like any other position. And some things started to shift and change in the company culture. And when I first started working there, sure, we had laptop computers and we had Blackberries at the time, but there wasn't this emphasis of 24/7 work. There wasn't this idea that you had to always be on call. By the time I walked away, there was this idea that you always had to be on call. Like if someone sent an email, you always had to be ready to respond, even if you were on vacation. The only time that people did not actually get held accountable was when they were on like maternity leave. Mm-hmm. And I swear to you, that was the only time, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. So the culture started to change. And in the midst of that, I started to change as a person. And I started to ask myself certain questions like entertainment PR is a very thankless type of job most times. Like you're doing all these things for other people, but you barely get a thank you sometimes. And then your work just kind of goes unnoticed sometimes. So for me, I felt like my creativity was being stifled at a certain point, and I knew that I just had more in me. I had a larger voice than what I was being allowed to display in that particular scenario. And I started this jewelry line with my co-founder on the side. So I was doing that, and I found so much happiness and joy. I found my creative outlet. I was actually creating these pieces, making these jewelry pieces. People like Beyonce wore jewelry, Amber Rose wore jewelry from our line. It was in Vogue Italia. It was in like Nylon magazine. It was everywhere. And so that started to give me this feeling like you can do more. You're capable of more. Your creativity has more. Your voice has more. But if you stay here, this is going to look like. This is not going to change. And I could see where there were certain people there that this was truly their life. And when I looked at it, and it was like, when you look at people that are way high up on the food chain and that's like the top, you can go no further. And I looked at their life and their work-life balance, and I'm like, do I want that? Do I want that to be me? And my answer was no, easily no. So I started trying to figure out and going deep within myself to understand what is next for you. What do you really like? What do you really want? Where do you see yourself? Because if you don't see yourself here, where do you see yourself? And for me in particular, I stayed there longer than I should have. So I got to a place where I did start to be miserable. Mm-hmm. I did. But that does not always have to be the case. And one of the things that I say now, having learned more about myself, is you have to take control of what you want. Nobody made me stay there. And at a certain point, it clicked to me too. I said, you know what? I can do what I want to do. I'm miserable here, but I need to decide that I'm going to fully take control of everything that happens now moving forward. No one is holding me hostage here, and I need to make the moves and make the changes that I need to make in my life so that I can see things progress in the direction that I want to go in. It's only up to me. So you don't have to be miserable, but a lot of times people allow themselves to get so complacent and comfortable. And that's what I did. You allow yourself to become miserable in a situation, but there is somebody else out there who would be completely and perfectly happy in the job that you have. So sometimes it's not the job, it's you. You've it. You need a new challenge. Maybe you need a new outlet, whatever it is. But it doesn't mean that you have to be miserable in a job and that a job is miserable just because you're ready to move on. Maybe it's a personal thing. And those are the things we have to identify for ourselves.
Such great advice. And I think among the many great things that you said, one is especially for people to do what you did and looking at the people who are a few steps ahead of you, your boss, the CEO, whoever, and think, do I want that position, that life, that all of that, which doesn't mean you have to jump off and become an entrepreneur. But as you said, maybe you're moving on to something else, or it's a new job or a position elsewhere. But you have to look at, am I putting in all this work for that position, which is next in line for me? Or am I just here and sort of going through the motions? It could be you need a new challenge, a new opportunity, a new job, or to jump off and do something on your own. And I think, too, it's powerful what you said about the misery might not be because the job is miserable. You might just need to make some kind of change for yourself and evaluating that.
Absolutely.
Yes. So after you quit your job, well, first of all, let me go back. When you decided to quit, was there a moment, though, where you did have that conversation with yourself, like, am I crazy? Or did you know for sure?
No, I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew I needed to leave. And my final straw, I had been writing my book for months prior. So it took me about 9 months to write my book. And I was almost done at the point where I said, I'm quitting. And it was two things that happened. One thing was someone was brought into the company that I felt like I always had to check their work. And it was like, this is not okay. And then there started to be a conversation where maybe I'd have to report to this person who I'm now checking your work. Okay, that's not okay. And it just makes you feel overlooked. So that happened. And then I had gone on like a 3-day weekend type of vacation. And while going on that vacation, naturally, I did not check my emails regularly, and I wasn't really responding. There was nothing urgent that was happening. But when I got back to the office, before I could even have breakfast, my direct manager called a meeting with me and wanted to discuss how unavailable I was.
On vacation.
Exactly, on vacation, and then tried to make up some type of story about someone who was supposed to be sort of reporting to me and working on projects with me. So tried to make up a scenario where she said that this young lady had complained about me or something of that nature. And I'm like, wait a minute. Me and this young lady have an excellent relationship. Like, we know each other outside of work now. So you're lying. I know you're lying. And I just started to feel like this was messy and there was no return from all of this. Like, it just started to get really messy. So I just, in that conversation in that day, I was pretty darn sure that this was the end for me. I was not going to subject myself to any more of this, and that's why I had been working so hard behind the scenes in my downtime to execute this novel, because I knew that I wanted to make that my new reality. I wanted to make that happen, but I wasn't going to wait until I quit to start writing. I needed to be working on that simultaneously so that I could make things take shape after I eventually quit. So that was sort of my point where I said, oh no. Excuse my language, but it was like, you got me fucked up. Like, I'm not going to do this. No. And then the final straw was, Christmas, it's summertime, and you are now talking to me about, as my manager, about your plans for the holidays and other people's plans for the holidays. And you're basically telling me that I'm now going to have to be in New York for the holidays because I'm in California and I would always go home for 2 weeks. Everybody knows that. That was probably the only time I would go home. Not probably. It was. I would only go home like once a year. But you're from New York. All your family is in New York. And you're telling me as my manager that you now take precedent over me, and you live locally. And you're telling me I'm going to have to go home for like maybe 2 days or something and rush back to be in the office. I just laughed to myself internally because I said, I won't even be here. So good luck Because now you have me roped into these plans and you're telling me it's not even a conversation. You're basically trying to, exert this authority. And I just said, this is where I have to bow out. This is where I have to exit. And funny enough, quickly, the last thing on that is when I was giving my 2 weeks, my manager and I were having a conversation, and she knew that I was looking, for other stuff. And she was helping me sort of at a point. And so I was telling her, it's been great, da, 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 da. And she said, wait, are you giving me your 2 weeks notice? And she was so shocked. And I just laughed and I said, yeah, I am.
She was shocked that you were doing it?
Yes, because sometimes I think these companies and people, we're all guilty of this. Sometimes we take advantage of people and their kindness and their willingness to be there and the fact that they are there day to day, no matter what we throw at them. So we never think of the point where they'll eventually say, I've had enough and I don't have to take this and I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And they were shocked.
Right.
So she was shocked and I was happy because I felt relieved. I just felt so relieved. And it was like no one could figure out what I was going to do after I left this position. And I didn't care to explain to them. I didn't care what they thought. I just said, I'm just leaving. That's just it. I'm taking some time off. I didn't care what they thought of me. Because for me, this was about my sanity. It was about my happiness, all of those things. But please believe I had been working behind the scenes on my own plans. So I wasn't just making a statement and saying I quit today.
Right. To make it right. It wasn't a performance. You had a plan.
No.
I was going to mention that this idea of, for you, it was working on a novel. For other people, it's starting to build their business or whatever it's going to be, of doing that while you're in the position before you make the leap. It's possible to do that. You certainly can. Some people say, I don't have the time. Find the time.
You gotta
make the time. The time is there. Yes. Right. Make the time to do that. So for you, then you were working on the novel. Was this pre-season love?
Exactly.
Working on your novel. And you also, when you quit, you traveled the world too shortly after that. I feel like those are two extraordinary things you did. You published a novel with Simon & Schuster, not just self-published, just putting it out on your own. You got a deal with Simon & Schuster, published your novel, and you traveled the world. So tell us, for both of those things, which are very different but both incredible, what was the first step for you in each of those cases and making those things happen after you quit your job?
I would say, okay, let me back up a second. So the publishing of the novel, those steps had started to come into play before I actually quit. Mm-hmm. So first things first in both scenarios was research. When I decided I want to write this novel, I've had a story to tell and I've always wanted to tell it. I started researching publishing, the publishing industry, how to even write a book. Like a lot of people that come to me and ask me questions about novels, books, and everything like that, they don't even know what the average word count is to constitute a novel. They don't know. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't know either. But these are the things that you must figure out before you go into anybody else's face and try and have a conversation with them and say that you want to be an author. No, you need to know some of the fundamental things. So I knew that there was a lot that I didn't know. So I did a lot of research. When I wasn't writing, the days that I didn't feel like writing, I was researching. I was researching how to write a pitch letter, a query letter to agents. I was researching what that process looked like. I was researching everything that you could research about just the publishing industry because I knew nothing. So the first step in everything I say is research. So you can know the landscape, you can know where your shortcomings are, you can know where you need to, maybe exert some more energy or take some classes, do some of the things you need to do to be your best to really compete and put yourself out there. So before I actually quit, funny enough, I was at I was at the NBA Finals in Miami. And this goes to show you that talking to a select group of people sometimes about what your dreams and aspirations are and what you want to do, it can be beneficial because one of my coworkers, she emailed me and said, hey, the author Zane is having a publishing boot camp in Maryland. Maybe you should go to this, because I told her I was working on this book. Mm-hmm. So I'm at finals in Miami, sitting in the offices that the NBA creates for us in the hotel. And I'm thinking, what do I do? what do I do? Because it would have been right when would have come back off of the road from finals. I would have had to turn around, get a bus ticket from DC. I mean, from New York to DC, rent a car, go stay with my friend, drive to this boot camp, do all this stuff to make it happen. And I was just thinking it through in my head. But I said to myself, I was like, do you want this? If you want this bad enough, you need to sign up for this class. You need to make it happen. I don't care what it takes. You need to make it happen and you need to do it. So I signed up for that boot camp. So that boot camp was truly the first step in launching, let's say, my writing career, because I went to that boot camp, learned a lot of good information, met some great people. And one of the people that I met there was Zane's sister, who is her publishing director for her publishing imprint. And I told her, I said, I'm not quite ready yet. My novel is being edited, but when it's ready, I'd love to send it to you. So I started establishing the relationships and knowing the landscape before I walked away from my position. So by the time I walked away, I had my sights set on getting a traditionally published deal, like a book deal, but I didn't know that was truly going to happen. And that's also, real quick, I'll add a testament to putting your mind towards something, that one goal, and not letting go. For me, people they would say things to me, like even some of the I can't think, literary agents. Mm-hmm. They would say, oh, have you ever thought of self-publishing? This is before self-publishing was as big as it is now, because this was like maybe 4 years ago, but they were mentioning it to me and I said, yeah, I've heard of it. But to be honest with you, the only way I'll self-publish is if every single major publisher turns me down. Because right now, my goal is to get traditionally published. That's what I'm doing. And because that was my goal, I feel like that is exactly what happened, because I didn't second guess myself. I didn't question it. That was the only goal that I had in mind. So then fast forward to after I quit, after I found out that my book was getting picked up to be published, that's when I decided you can either stay here in New York, where you've been for years now, or you can go somewhere else and try and have an amazing experience. So that's what I decided to do when I decided to travel. And like I said, the first thing that I did was I started to research. My first home base was going to be Paris. And I started to research and talk to people and stuff. And it was like, actually, you took French for 3 years in high school, but you don't really remember that much. So maybe it's not a good idea to go live there, because it might be too much of a culture shock. So I decided to go to London. But what I did was I talked to friends that were living there, and I reached out to see, like, what is this experience like before I go and place myself in this situation. So I would say that in both instances, yes, it took a lot of guts. Yes, it took a lot of me believing in myself, but it also was, my first step was researching what I was doing and what I was potentially getting myself into, so that I wasn't completely going into it blind.
Yes, and thank you for sharing the story in both of those journeys and incredible things that you did, and the fact that one of the key things, at least what I got from it too, was talking to the right people, and not only just the people who can help you, but it sounds like too, just letting the right people know, whether that's your friends or whoever in your circle, of what you wanted to do and what your goal was. And then it starts to come from other people that you don't expect, like running into Zane's sister, who's her publishing director. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just feel like that. I've been in that situation too, where you're just telling someone, even if or you don't even know necessarily, but even if you don't think that they are the person to help you, but giving the right people the energy of, this is what I'm doing, hold this for me, this is what my plan is, this is what my goal is. And then it just starts to come from other places.
Yeah, you have to be open to sharing with some people, not everybody, but with some people, because you have to be open to allowing people to help you in whatever small way that might even be.
Support is sexy.
Exactly. There you go. Like, if you don't speak up and you don't say anything, there's no way that people can support you, even in the slightest. So you don't want to go screaming from the rooftops, especially if things are premature and in early stages. But as you continue to see some momentum and you have your mind made up about what you want to do, it does not hurt to tell people what you're trying to do.
And going before you're ready, I feel like is something else that we sometimes don't do. So for you, for example, even though you had done the research, but then as you said, you learned about this boot camp, and then what if you had waited like, oh, I can't make it back. It's going to be too much. You know, we can all, Mel Robbins, I love her book, 5 Seconds of Courage. We go through, if you wait within that 5 seconds and let yourself start making excuses, you likely won't do it, as opposed to being like, how can I make this work, and going for it.
Yeah, yeah. And real quick, another thing about that, I started reaching out to literary agents before I was ready. I hadn't even had any editing work done on my manuscript. So a lot of them responded back to me and asked me, you know, for sample chapters, and I sent it to them. And I remember this one man agent, he responded back to me, and it was so crushing. Same trip in Miami, same all around the same time, and he said, I love the storyline. I like the story, but as this work stands right now in its truest form, I cannot bring this to any of my editors because it's just a little too raw. It's not polished enough yet. And I was devastated because he didn't say you don't have a good story, you don't have a good book. He said it's not up to par yet. And I was like, oh, but that was a learning lesson for me, because had I not gone through that experience and reached out to him before I was ready, I would not have taken the steps to get my manuscript edited so that by the time someone of, you know, true value was offering me an opportunity to listen to me, I was ready. I had the finalized work that was going to be great for them to read instead of some makeshift version. So sometimes you have to go before you're ready so that you can learn what you need to do next.
That's right. You don't know what you don't know, right?
There you go. Yep.
So now, when did you decide then, after publishing the book and traveling the world, when did you decide to launch Life According to Her as a blog? Was that during that time? Was that after?
It was. It was during that time, because I knew that people, especially in my circles, they knew me as a publicist. Nobody knew me as a writer. So I felt like I needed to launch Life According to Her to tell stories and to get my writing out there. Because otherwise, like, how am I just going to pop on the scene with a book and nobody even knows that you've ever written anything, you know? So that was sort of my way to segue into being an author. And in that space, I wanted to tell the stories that myself and my friends were talking about, dating and career and all of these things, and just tell my stories basically, and the stories of those people close to me. But as Life According to Her evolved, it ended up being that I wasn't just telling my stories, I was telling the stories of other people and showcasing them and highlighting their stories, because I started to feel like there was a lack of women supporting women type of, you know, community out there. And I wanted to be a part of creating that and making that conversation, bringing that conversation more to the forefront, because we would all see all these just like, you know, yes, I'm guilty of watching reality shows, and I'm not even gonna say guilty. Yes, I watch them just like a lot of other people do, because if we weren't all watching, they wouldn't be on air.
Right.
So, you know, I would see things, though, that would make me be like, man, like, people are probably really getting this perception that it's okay to be nasty. It's okay to be backstabbing. It's okay to call each other out of our names and to do things that are just not really the best. So I want to be a part of the conversation of creating this space where it is okay to support each other. It is okay to tell our stories and to champion each other and all of that. So that's how Life According to Her started to evolve from just a blog of me telling my stories and my writing to telling the stories that incorporated other people and just providing a platform for empowerment and encouragement, really.
And I love, well, we talk about the recent pivot that you did with it, but when I first learned about Life According to Her, and I think I saw probably first on Instagram, and I was just like, this is beautiful, just the way it looks in addition to the content. It just felt like, for lack of a better word, a safe space to learn about, you know, it just really felt warm, I guess is the word.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So tell us about then the recent pivot that you did with Life According to Her and changing the name to Switch, Pivot, or Quit.
So to be just straight up candid with you guys, I didn't know what I wanted to do with life according to her after I started making sort of like the changes, other than provide that safe, good space for encouragement. But I always felt like I needed more of a base behind it. Like I needed to give more, but I just didn't know what that looked like. And I tried YouTube, wasn't really my zhuzh. And I had played with the idea of creating a podcast, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted the format to be like. So once I started to just dig around a bit more with myself, I said, you know what? This podcast feels right. And as the podcast felt right, and I called it Life According to Her initially, then I created this series within the podcast, which was Switch, Pivot, or Quit. And it just started to sort of catch. Mm-hmm. And it felt right in terms of the stories that I wanted to tell, the way that I knew I needed to reach an audience that was in a similar space that I was in, where you're trying to figure out what's next for you, but you don't really know what's next. So you're out there searching and trying to gather information and trying to gather inspiration and encouragement to help you in that journey. So I wanted to create a space that would then be an assist along that journey. So that's how the Switch, Pivot, or Quit series sort of really stuck. And whenever I would say the name to people, the response and the reaction was just so good that I said, you know what? And it took me some time. It really did. Because at first I was like, no, I spent all this time building Life According to I don't want to just abandon it. I can't just let it go like that. That's silly. But then one day, months later, because I had said, no, I'm not going to abandon it. But then months later, it was just like, you know what, girl, you have to know when to let go. Mm-hmm. You have to know when change is inevitable and when it's the best thing for you. If people are gravitating to Switch, Pivot, or Quit, maybe there is a larger purpose there that you need to take and run with. And that is the one step leads to the next step leads to the next step. Maybe you didn't know that this is where this was going to take you, but I strongly felt that this is a conversation that needed to be had. This is a voice that needed to be put out there, and our women's voices, and not feeling like we're alone in these situations when we want transition or change. Those stories need to be heard. So I said, you know what? I got to just do this. I got to do it. It's got to be all Switch, Pivot, or Quit now. So I just switched everything over, and it wasn't really as hard as I thought it would be, because it was almost like an evolution, and I peacefully put Life According to Her to rest.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful the way you shared that, because of so many things in there. You're chock full of great advice. But one of the things is the idea too of us sort of holding ourselves back because we're not able to let go of something that feels good to us, as you said. And you also see the response from other people. So there's really no other reason to hold on to it other than you feel like you've put all this time into it, or this is what you start. I'm not projecting this on you, but I've been there. This is what I started with, so I got to stick with this, etc. But it's like, but it feels, the change feels good to you and other people. So there's no reason to hold on to it. So just for our sisters listening to remember, sometimes it's time to, as you said, peacefully put that to rest and move on. You're growing is really what it is.
Exactly. That's absolutely what it is. And you won't feel bad about it, because the reception that I got from switching the name to, or changing the name to Switch, Pivot, or Quit was so good. Everyone loved it. Everyone said, oh, I really love the direction, because I think it really resonated with people in a way that I was going to continue to have an uphill battle trying to get people to resonate with Life According to Her, especially in a podcast front, because it felt more like storytelling. Like you were going to log on, you were going to hear this one woman's stories about her life. But that's not what it was. Mm-hmm. It's a collective of stories about all of our lives and the things that we go to and how we evolve as women and change in our personal lives and our professional lives. So I just felt like Switch, Pivot, or Quit is going to reflect that better. And I am not going to have a challenge with trying to get people to understand and hear this messaging. And that's the other thing. Don't create an uphill battle for yourself.
Right.
There's so many battles out there that we have to fight anyway. Why make it hard on ourselves?
Right. Now, what advice do you have? Maybe a couple of tips for, just from a tactical standpoint, of what it takes to rebrand yourself. So say you're out on social media, for example, with a certain brand and that kind of thing. What were a couple of things that you made sure to put in place to say, this is the new direction for people who might be in that space?
Mm-hmm. I put together a rough plan. Of what does Switch, Pivot, or Quit really entail? What does it look like? And I thought a lot about what that transition would look like. How does it fit in every space? Is it going to be like off-putting in certain spaces? How will the transition be? So I think your first thing that you need to do is absolutely plan. Write things down, and you'll be surprised how many of us out here call ourselves entrepreneurs or things of that nature, and we don't even have business plans. We don't even have any kind of concrete plans written down. So when people ask us questions, it's like, oh, I have it all in my head. Well, that's not really good enough, because I bet that some of these major companies, like let's say the Ubers of the world and people that are trading on NASDAQ and stuff like that, they don't have the plans all in their head. Their founders didn't have the plans all in their head. At some point, they had to write it down and put pen to paper and get those ideas concrete on paper and flesh things out. Because sometimes as you start to work it through and you start to write it down and answer some questions that might be in a business plan or something, you start to find some of the holes that you might need to fill in before you present and bring everything to the world. So my first thing would be to plan things out. And then the second thing, the thing that I was majorly worried about is just, how to make this transition with people that have been following and keeping up with Life According to Her for all this time. So the one thing that I did was I sent an email letting everybody know, being very candid about the name change. I didn't just try to slip one over on people and hope they would notice, because that would have been silly. I changed what I did for Instagram in particular. I went and let's say I secured the domain name for Switch, Pivot, or Quit through GoDaddy, okay? So that when I was ready to redirect the URL, it would work seamlessly and I wouldn't be in a situation where now I've announced that I'm making this switch over, but then I don't even have the URL. So I did some of those tactical things, as you say, in the background. I made sure that I got the Instagram handle for Switch, Pivot, or Quit. So what I did was, in the transition of everything, once I switched over Life According to Her to Switch, Pivot, or Quit, I then quickly went and captured Switch, Pivot, or Quit as an Instagram handle so that I could still have ownership of that. And then when that link, because this is what other people do and they don't realize when they switch things over. When links are dead, it's annoying to users and people viewing.
And it's bad for SEO and all of that stuff too. And when people try to find you, yeah.
Exactly. So what I wanted to do is all the people that had previously linked to Life According to Her on Instagram or any other social media or websites or whatever, I still wanted there to be a presence for Life According to Her, but then it would just redirect them and tell them, come hang out with us over at Switch, Pivot, or Quit. So there's a lot of little things. Like I didn't even realize until like maybe a month ago that on my website, I didn't even redirect all the social media. I was so busy doing everything else that I didn't, the little social media icons on the site, I didn't redirect those. So there's all these things that you have to think about on the back end. And I'm not saying making a name change or any type of switch like that is easy, but if you truly believe in your heart that it's worth it and it will make things easier for you, you should do it. You should absolutely do it.
Now, would you say there's a distinct difference between switching, pivoting, or quitting? And if so, what are the differences between those?
For me, the concept of switch, pivot, or quit that I want to champion for people is just change. The basis of it all is change. So for face value, we all know what switch, pivot, or quit means. And it can mean slightly different things to different people. You can classify something as a switch that someone else might really say, well, that's a pivot. So my whole thing is not really to get into the specifics and the ins and outs of what each one really looks like. It's more so to say, what does it look like as a process? Because I look at this as a process. So as a whole, you are deciding if you need to switch, pivot, or quit. But within that, you have to decide to also take action and to do the work that needs to be done personally. So then you can know what you need to do on the other side of that, whether that be switching, pivoting, or quitting, if that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. And speaking of process, I know that you do strategy sessions, switch, pivot, or quit strategy sessions with your clients. So tell us, you mentioned the process. You have a 3-step SPQ process: acknowledge, assess, and act. Tell us about that process, speaking of that.
Yeah, so I do 60-minute sessions with people, and they're available on the switchpivotorquit.com website. And what it is I found that, like I said, with creating a podcast, it just wasn't enough in terms of people that are specifically going through certain challenges and really need somebody to talk things through with, really just need some type of help and guidance in pushing them in the right direction or helping them to figure out what the right direction is for themselves. a lot of the thing that people don't realize is this is work that you have to do for yourself. So I'm not here to tell you exactly what you need to do and solve all your problems. I'm more so here through the acknowledge, assess, and act process is to get you in motion, to get you to understand what you might need to be doing, or maybe some of the mind shift changes that you need to, or mindset shifts that you might need to have, maybe some things that you haven't thought about, getting you to answer some of the hard questions. So in acknowledge, it's being honest with yourself. It's taking accountability. It's really looking at the full landscape of things that are happening. And in the assess phase, it's taking inventory. It's answering the hard questions. It's like, there's a lot of times there's some of these things that some of us read self-help books and stuff like that, and it may tell us to do this activity or answer these questions, and we say we will one day, but we just keep reading the book and we never do. Mm-hmm. So it's taking you to task and making you accountable if you really want to see change, if you really want to take action. And that's my main thing, is I can only work with people that really want to have that action implemented in their lives, because those are the people that are going to take what I'm saying and take it one step further and do the things that need to be done to see some kind of progress in their life. And then the last part is obviously action. It's putting everything into, I help you to put it into actionable steps, moves that you can make, things that you can do. And I mean, as you can see, I'm just one of those people, like, this is about your SPQ strategy session. But if we're talking about some of the things that you want to do and stuff, and I have great ideas for you, I'm just an idea person. That's what I am. I'm going to tell you. Mm-hmm. Maybe have you thought about this? Maybe you can think about that. So there's also like that added bonus in those sessions, because I do just have that general professional history, that corporate background, that marketing background, all that stuff. So there's just certain things that I know, and I'm not selfish about the things that I know. So I'll tell you what I know. I'll tell you how to do this. I'll tell you, maybe you should look into this. Maybe you should contact that person, whatever it may be. But it's all about the action at the end of the day. I can tell you everything that you need to do. I can help you get your mind right and all of that. But if you sit on it and you don't do anything with it, it's all for naught.
It's all for naught. Would you say that your business is primarily, at least right now, working with clients on an ongoing basis? I know you do the 60-minute strategy sessions, but then do you work with clients as a coach or accountability partner or that kind of thing on an ongoing basis?
Yes, I do. And I'm going to start offering that more forward-facing now. Mm-hmm. So it's more behind the scenes, how people come to me, but I'm going to start offering that as more of a program, let's say, if you will, moving forward. And I had an accountability program called Her Power Circle through Life According to Her, but as things shifted and changed, I had to sort of let that go. Mm-hmm. So it won't look exactly like that, but it will be a way for people that need extended help to continue to work with me till they get to where they feel they need to be, so that they can move on and do what they need to do.
Absolutely. Because Switch, you already know this, but Switch Pivot, that's why I reached out to you too. I already liked the brand, but when I saw your email, I was like, oh, you should come on. Was it on email or was it?
Yes,
I don't know. Somewhere I know I reached out like, oh, you have to come on and talk about this. Yeah, because I feel like the new name is so powerful, what it's all about, what so many of us, for a lot of different reasons, the world is a little nuts in some ways right now, are mm-hmm. looking at, am I doing what I really either want to do, need to do? Am I contributing? Just so many, I'll speak for myself, so many questions. Sometimes you need someone to let you know it's okay to switch, pivot, or quit in this time to do something that really makes you feel happy, fulfilled, moving forward, and that kind of thing. So all that to say, and my support of you in doing this with helping people be able to do that, being more open or forward, as you said, about your ability to help people move through that. I think people would be so excited to connect with you in that way.
Thank you. And I'm so appreciative that you reached out, because you were absolutely one of the people that when I made the name change, you responded and you were like, I love this thing, and I was mm-hmm. just like, thank you so much, because, when you see that your peers understand what you're doing too, and they get it. And when people, and that goes back to rebranding and changing and stuff. When it's easy for people to get it, it just makes your journey that much easier. Right. So that's one of the things you have to pay attention to when you're deciding what you're going to do, Mm-hmm.
Let's take a quick break to thank our sponsors. So, as an entrepreneur, and especially as a solopreneur, You want to make the best use of your time. And I know for me, with booking guests and having appointments and consultations for Support is Sexy and the podcast, I don't have time to be going back and forth with everybody about scheduling. And that is why I honestly love and use Acuity Scheduling. I've been using it for about a year now, and it has saved me so much time when it comes to booking appointments and guests for the Support is Sexy podcast. In fact, I would not be able to do it without Acuity Scheduling. I love it and I use it. And I was so happy when I reached out to them and they were excited about supporting the Support is Sexy podcast. And I spoke to Kristen Barber, customer happiness specialist, who tells us about Acuity and a special offer that they have just for Support is Sexy listeners.
So normally, if you go to Acuity Scheduling and sign up for a free trial, we have a completely free 14-day trial, no card, nothing. But for all of our lovely Support is Sexy listeners, we are giving you guys 45 days totally free. So if you follow the link that Elayne gives you, you guys can get signed up 45 days, totally free. Check out any plan you want. So the highest one, whatever you need, and we'll just let you know when that's coming to an end. And you can either then put in your card info and keep rocking that account that you're on, or you can even just downgrade to our totally free forever plan. If you don't need some of the major bells and whistles, you can use that puppy completely free for the rest of your life, however you see fit.
And that URL is acuityscheduling.com/sexy.
That's right. We'll be keeping an eye out for you sexy ladies.
Again, that URL is acuityscheduling.com/sexy. So that's ACUITY scheduling.com/sexy. Make sure you check it out. It's well worth it. A 45-day risk-free trial. And look, we want to make sure that we support the brands that are supporting women entrepreneurs and Support is Sexy. So check it out at acuityscheduling.com/sexy. And now, back to the show. So, Ahyiana, what would you say entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Oh, gosh, it's taught me that I'm stronger than I ever thought I was. It's taught me that I am extremely supportive and encouraging to other people. And that's just who I am at my core. And I like that about myself. I didn't really recognize that about myself when I was in the corporate world. And it's taught me to trust myself more, to believe in myself more, because a lot of times there's a lot of days when all you have is the faith in yourself and the ability to trust yourself and know that you're making the right decisions and follow your gut and your instincts. So it's really opened me up to understanding how I operate more and understanding that I can trust myself. And I think that it's one of those crazy things, because had I not been in this position, I don't know that I would have evolved in these ways. Because some of the day-to-day 9-to-5 type work, it just doesn't really require it all the time. You know, you're just going through the motions sometimes. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't really require you to go deep and dig deep, unless you really want to make some changes. So I think that there's a lot that I've learned about myself as a woman through the process of being an entrepreneur. But those are like some of the key things that I've learned.
So in closing, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Oh, gosh. I would have to be my mom. And I would just say, thank you for just being open and never being judgmental about the things that I wanted to do, never trying to hold me back, always giving me that encouragement that I can do what I want to do, and never trying to stifle my growth because of your own fears. So I think that would be my person, and that would be, and really, I would say that to both my parents. If I could slide in another person, my dad would absolutely be in there as well, because they were the people when I said, hey, I want to quit my job and I'm really like close to doing this. they were like, do it. My dad was like, if that's what you need to do, do it. When I asked questions about, hiring an editor, he's like, it's a lot of money. That's an investment. Do you really believe in this project? Yeah, then do it. Like they really, even when I said I wanted to go to Europe and I wanted to travel the world and everything, do it. Because they were also those same people that listened to me time and time again when I really wasn't happy and I wasn't feeling like I was reaching my full potential and my highest potential in my corporate career. They were the people that were listening to me as well. So they knew both sides of it. So they championed me. Even moving to New York, I was living in LA, and when I moved to New York, they told me recently, they were like, we were not happy about that at all. We were super scared for you. Mm-hmm. They had never even been to New York before. They were like, what the hell is she thinking? But they never once said, I don't know if that's a good idea. Don't go, this and that. No, they were absolutely supportive. I never knew they even had like real reservations about it until recently. So I would have to thank them and say that they have been my biggest supporters and champions of the things that I wanted to do and just letting me grow and learn in life and become my own woman and just supporting me with my decisions throughout. So yeah, those would be my people.
Excellent. I love it. They believed in you, even if they didn't believe in what you were doing necessarily.
Exactly.
Right. They believed in you. Mm-hmm. So tell us now how we can support you, your new website, URL, social media, and all that good stuff, how everybody can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. So the website is switchpivotorquit.com. The Instagram is switchpivotorquit. That's usually where I hang out most times. You can DM me, all that good stuff. If you want to email, it's switchpivotorquit@gmail. And Facebook is the same, switchpivotorquit. And I hang out on Twitter a little bit too, but it's SPQ podcast, but not as much as like Instagram. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Excellent. Ahyiana, thank you so much. This was so fun. I feel inspired having talked to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was definitely fun. I feel like I just released my whole life to you guys.
Good. That's what it's all about. I love it.
Exactly.
Now, before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
I would say trust yourself, follow your gut, and do what the hell you want to do. Just do what the hell you want to do. Don't worry about what anybody's going to think. Don't worry about what anybody's going to say, how it'll be received. Do what you want to do, because in the end, that's where you're going to come back to when you're unhappy, is you weren't doing what you wanted to do. So to find your true happiness, I think you need to do what you truly feel like you want to do. And those things may change. You may do what you want to do, and then 6 months later, you got to do what you want to do again. Mm-hmm. It's okay. You don't have to worry about that, because there's no one who lived this life before you. So there's no one who you can compare yourself to truly in its most genuine form and say, oh, I haven't reached this mark. I'm not where I'm supposed to be yet. You are the only you. So there's no other benchmark that you can try and measure up to. As long as you're putting forth your best effort and you're doing everything that you know that you can do, that's all that really matters. No one can judge you and say, oh, you're not here yet. You're not there yet. Okay, maybe I'm not meant to be here or there yet. You don't know my story. There's no one who lived before you. So there's no one that knows exactly where you should be at this moment in your life.
Excellent. Ahyiana, thank you so much. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ahyiana. Tons of great inspiration in there. For more on Ahyiana, on Switch, Pivot, or Quit, and to get links to all of the resources that she mentions in this episode, go to supportissexypodcast.com and search Ahyiana, Ahyiana. Again, that's supportissexypodcast.com. Search for Ahyiana, Ahyiana. And her show notes page will pop up with everything there, ways to get in touch with her, all of the resources, links galore. And before you go, I want to make sure that I read our review of the week. I didn't do that on yesterday's episode, but I remembered, and we're going to do that today. I want to make sure that as much as you all celebrate the podcast and celebrate me, which I completely appreciate, I want to celebrate you. So I'm reading these reviews to let you know that I hear you. I don't see you, but I see you. You know what I mean? So this review from this week comes from Charmaine Perry, and Charmaine says, "Hi, Elayne. Hey, Charmaine. I have been listening to your podcast for the last few months and must say I look forward to hearing your voice weekly. As Sharon Jameson also mentioned, I wish encouraging women messengers like you were around when I was growing up. Thank you for finding these amazing women and letting us hear their stories to teach us that we can and must be the drivers of our destinies because time truly waits for no one. Thank you. Thank you, Charmaine. That makes me feel inspired. Hearing your feedback, what you said really resonates with you, and the fact that you mentioned Sharon Jameson. Sharon is a fantastic woman and was a great guest on the show, so I appreciate hearing from you. And for all you other lovely sisters listening, make sure that you leave a review for the podcast. I'd love for you to subscribe, and if you love it, leave a review because I want to hear from you. And who knows, I might read your review on the podcast week to week. Either way, I'm happy to have you here. I appreciate you. I appreciate your feedback. I appreciate your time because I know you're taking time out of whatever you're doing to listen. I don't take it lightly. Love having you here. And as I always say, it would not be the same without you. All right. So again, thank you for being here. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.